here on YouTube on VypDrive for another episode of VypDrive, the podcast about tech, hosted by your boy Viper here. We got a good guest in the back tonight. The iPad nerd is here. We're going to talk to him, so let's not waste no more time. Let's get into the intros and bring him out so we can get this party started. Yes, here we go. Woo. So, this is VypDrive episode 149, and 149 brings the return of the king of iPad. That's right, he's back, he's here, we're live on VypDrive, which starts now. What's up, people? This your boy Viper, the man about tech, and welcome back to another episode of VypDrive. This is the podcast about tech, hosted by the man about tech, and tonight he returns, the iPad maestro, tech content creator, king of iPads, iPad everything, Mr. iPad Olympia himself, Mr. Christopher Lawley is back. What's up, bro? How you doing?
I am doing great. This is my second time back, and honestly, every time I get the best intro from you. Like, nobody can top your intros. They're the best. I feel I'm psyched. Let's go.
Woo, that's right. I am so glad to have you. Thank you for making the time tonight. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. I had a lot of fun last time, and I'm excited to be back. Let's do this.
So it's funny because you were actually requested to be on here because I had Andrew Edwards. He was in my Twitter space for my last episode with Renee Ritchie. He was like, you need to bring Christopher Lawley on here. I'm like, I've had him on here, but we'll bring him back. So we brought you back, and we are here to go. But before we start anyway, I got to congratulate you because right over your right shoulder there is a 100,000 subscriber YouTube plaque, the silver plaque. So congratulations to you, sir. That's an accomplishment right there.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I just got this. I am so excited. It's been a ton of hard work, but I was never a sports kid. I don't have sports trophies. That is like kind of makes up for that. I'm so excited. But a huge congratulations to you because you just made a huge announcement. I mean, you want to tell the people what I mean, they probably already know, but congratulations to you. You just made a really big announcement.
I did. You know what? I mean, since we're here, since you put me on the spot, you put your boy Viper on the spot. We can get into it real quick.
I mean, if you're going to congratulate me, I got to congratulate you because you had a huge announcement.
I respect that, man. I respect that. So for those of y'all who don't know, Vid Summit, one of probably the best video creator conferences out there, happens usually every year. Last year, obviously, it was impacted by the pandemic, so it was completely virtual. This year, they're returning to live events or in-person events, I should say. I already had everything booked. My hotel, my flight, everything was already booked. I was going there anyway. I was going to be there regardless. But then I got a DM from the homie Daryl Eaton, who is the founder of Vid Summit. He was like, yo, Viper, I need to know, will you be willing to be one of the MCs for Vid Summit? And for those y'all that don't know what an MC is, basically means a host. I guess they're going to have multiple MCs, but Daryl Eaton hit me up personally like, yo, Viper, I want you to be one of the hosts for Vid Summit. And how could I reject that? I mean, of course, I'm in the building anyway. I'm already there, so of course I accepted. So at Vid Summit 2021, at the end of September of this year, Viper, not only will I be in attendance taking it all in, I will actually be one of the MCs at Vid Summit 2021. So thank you for the congrats, man. I appreciate the love, bro.
That's awesome. No, that's huge. That is some serious recognition right there. You're doing some great work, and that is awesome. Hats off.
Man, I appreciate you, man. Thank you. So we gonna go from 0 to 100 right off the bat.
Let's do it.
So let me I talked about this before. I think Renee and Drew Taylor and Tech when they were on here. So I gotta talk about it with you. So M1 iPad Pro released near the end of April. Apple did a couple of things that they have never done before with previous iPads with these brand new M1s. Well, I guess the biggest headline obviously was the fact that they included the M1 chip on the iPad Pro. Kind of crazy. We didn't think that was happening, but I mean, the A14 chips in previous iPads or the A chips in previous iPads were a derivative of the M1 anyway, so it's not that far of a leap. But the other thing that happened with the new M1 iPad Pros is that Apple introduced a new storage option, a 2 terabyte storage option, in addition to actually bumping up the RAM. The previous model last year had 6 gigabytes of RAM. The standard this year is 8 gigabytes. But, Chris, they also introduced a 16 gigabyte variant of the M1 iPad Pro. So all of this beefed up hardware led us techies to speculate what the hell is the iPad doing with all this additional hardware? Clearly, there's something coming down the pipeline at WWDC, because remember, the iPad released at the end of April. WWDC is at the beginning of June, only a few weeks away. I'm like, we're like, okay, clearly Apple has some type of other plan for these iPad Pros. So we were kind of excited. We thought maybe we might get pro level apps like Final Cut Pro or something, or maybe macOS and iPadOS will merge, something crazy. We were thinking about it. We were speculating, but here comes WWDC 21. Apple announces iPadOS 15, and we just like, I think we all probably let out a collective sigh, like, what is this, Apple? Why are you teasing us? No major changes to iPadOS at WWDC. So, Chris, my question to you, being the iPad maestro, how did we bamboozle our own selves into thinking that Apple going to make major changes when history should have told us that it wouldn't happen? It wasn't going to be like that. But we kind of got ourselves all jazzed up, and we got the okie doke.
So okay, let's go back a little bit. So M1 chip comes to the iPad Pro. Well, the M1 chip is just the A14X rebranded. So the previous iPads in 2018, they got the A12X. Then the ones that came out in 2020, they got the A12Z, which was based on the A12X that just had one more GPU core, because the A12X had 7 GPU cores, and one of them was disabled for binning reasons because it just wasn't, when you were making them at such mass, they weren't able to make all 8 GPU cores working. In 2020, they perfected that. So we roll around to 2021. End of 2020, actually, I'm sorry. The M1 chip comes out in the Macs. The Macs are going ARM. The Apple's making their own chips, Sayonara Intel, and it's all on the M1 chip now. Fast forward to the iPad Pros. It makes sense. I'm surprised honestly, the branding is the M1 chip. I'm not surprised that it's the same chip. I am surprised they're calling it the M1 chip in the iPad Pros and not just the A14X. But I think the M1 chip was received so well that they're like, of course we're going to put this branding on this chip because it was received so well in the Macs. We want this in the iPad because, everyone loves it in the Macs. Everyone's going to love it in the iPads. But when they got that, people were disappointed because there wasn't the software to back that up. Now, I would argue there is the software already to back that up. For those that don't know, I run my whole channel from an iPad, meaning I edit all my videos. I've edited podcasts. I edit photos. My whole creative workflow and whole administrative business workflow is completely on the iPad. So that's pretty important to me. Fast forwarding to WWDC, we see iPadOS 15. Now, there's some pretty key things in here. One, they reworked multitasking. Now, having all that extra RAM in the M1 chips means multitasking is just going to work even better. More apps are going to be able to stay open in the background. More app pairs will be able to stay open without things having to reload from scratch when opening them. That's pretty important. But Apple also made a huge announcement that I think for a lot of YouTubers kind of went under the radar because we don't typically do. I mean, I know there's some YouTubers that do this, but Swift Playgrounds is getting a massive update. You're going to be able to write an app start to finish on your iPad, write the first line of code all the way to submitting it to the App Store for sale. So this is Apple's true first Pro app for the iPad. Now, there have already been Pro apps on the iPad. In fact, I did a video about that recently, about a bunch of Pro apps that are already on the iPad that you can use today with different iPads, not just the iPad Pro. But Swift Playgrounds is Apple's true first Pro app. I don't think Final Cut and Logic are that far away from the iPad now. The iPad has the hardware to run it. You can kind of see with different... APIs and some other stuff that it's kind of hinting at Pro apps coming. A few weeks ago after WWDC, Apple announced that there's going to be I'm blanking on the word. Anyway, some apps are going to be able to take advantage of more RAM on these faster iPads, which signals to me Pro apps are coming from Apple. Not all apps are going to be able to do it. Apple's going to basically allow only certain apps to do this, certain third-party apps, and of course their apps. This is so that apps that are poorly written don't get through, because if you write an app that just eats up all the RAM, one, multitasking will never work on your iPad. Two, it's just going to crash everything. So app RAM limitations in iOS and iPadOS are kind of a necessary thing to keep better multitasking, keep apps running in the background without crashing them. It's just like how Chrome or Slack or something on the Mac can just eat up all your RAM and then just make your computer just make the fastest computer just come to an absolute crawl.
Yeah.
So I think there are enough flags, there's enough signals to me to show that Apple is working on pro apps and it's coming. It's just not ready just yet. I would, if I'm a betting man, I would bet the fall or maybe the spring of next year.
So you say that pro level apps are on the way. We just got to wait a little bit longer. Okay.
Yeah, from Apple. And pro level apps are already here. Like if you want
Yeah.
an editing app, LumaFusion's great. If you want photo editing app, there's Lightroom, Darkroom, Pixelmator Photo. There's so many things out there.
Definitely. So you were alluding to some things that Apple did with iPadOS 15. Now, I think for most of the hardcore tech nerds, given the hardware that is in the new iPad Pros this year, the upgrades to iPadOS 15 were kind of a letdown. I'm curious, as a person, as you just stated, who runs their entire business off of their iPad, what are your like more in-depth thoughts on iPadOS 15? Did Apple do enough to satisfy you, a person who does everything on your iPad, or are there still some things that you would like to see added that have not been added as of yet?
There's always going to be stuff that I want to see added. One thing that I kind of kept in mind going into this WWDC is we had the pandemic last year. A lot of people had to start working from home, working remotely, weren't working in person together. So that I'm sure, I am absolutely 100% positive that impacted some of the features that would have been in iOS, iPadOS, macOS, all the updates that would have came out this year. I'm positive that would have impacted those.
Right.
Was there enough in iPadOS 15? I can go back and forth on that. Multitasking, I think multitasking has finally hit its stride in iPadOS 15. Then there's features like Quick Note that I'm super excited about. Shortcuts, which is something I use every single day, got some massive changes. There's a bunch of stuff that I am been asking for a really long time that have come to iPadOS 15 that I would like to see, or that I've wanted to see, and that's here now. But there's stuff like Time Machine for the iPad, true external monitor support, Final Cut and Logic, stuff like that I still want to see come in the future. But I'm not writing the iPad off because it didn't come in iPadOS 15. There's always going to be more. There's always going to be something else. Like a few years ago, it used to be external drive support. Like that was the thing. And then before that was a Files app and stuff like that. There's always been kind of like moving the goalposts for the iPad in the tech industry. It's like we've always wanted one thing. Okay, then we get it. Then we pick up the goalpost and run it 100 meters that way, and then put it back down. It's like, okay, now you got to get here. So it's kind of always been that way for the iPad, playing catch up almost to like what we want, and I'm okay with that. I can run my business right now and do everything that I need to from the iPad. There's stuff that would make that those quality of life things even better. But it's not that I'm not writing off the iPad because they don't have them.
Yeah, I mean, we know that the iPad is the most dominant tablet out there in the game today. No other tablet is even remotely close to iPad, and there's still a lot of good things going on with iPad right now. Even though, according to the hardcore tech nerds, iPadOS 15 was probably a letdown. I'm guessing. I know for the mass public, however, I mean, they're going to be happy with the changes in iPadOS 15 because they were never expecting some of the stuff that we hardcore techies were expecting with iPadOS. So they don't care about pro level apps. They don't care about some of the stuff that we want. They just want the iPad for media consumption, probably maybe doing some drawing, different things like that. And they're happy. The internet connectivity and all that stuff. So they're happy. So also the other thing that came with iPad, the pro level iPads this year, the addition of 5G. I don't know if that's a big deal yet, even still here in 2021, but now they are future proof. So when 5G becomes more of a valuable option, you now have them on these iPad Pros.
Yeah, I have 5G disabled on mine just because in my area 5G is pretty terrible.
Right.
It's actually worse than LTE in most cases when it comes to latency. So while the download speeds might be slightly faster, it still ends up being slower. So I'm anxious to see what good 5G would look like. We'll see. I have it on my iPad here. I use it. It's handy to have, but like I said, I mostly rely on LTE.
Yeah, I have a five. I have the iPad Pro M1, and I have the iPad. I mean, not the iPad. I have the iPhone 12 Pro Max. Both have 5G. I have 5G turned off on the iPhone because it, like you said, it's slower in a lot of cases than 4G LTE. So 5G is still not quite ready for prime time yet, but obviously in the future, as the network develop more and more, it'll be ready, and then we can take full advantage of that. So, I want to go back to something you were talking about a little bit earlier. I want to dig a little bit deeper into pro level apps on iPad. Now, I do my research for the podcast, and I was looking through your video catalog as of late, and you recently made a whole entire video talking about the pro level apps that are on iPad.
Yeah.
Obviously, the iPad has some pro level apps, but I think when we hardcore tech nerds talk about the lack of pro level apps, we're talking about things like Final Cut Pro, Logic Pro, things like that. But like you said in your video, the iPad has pro level apps on it right now already. Some of them, which both me and you use on probably a day to day basis. The one that comes to my mind immediately is Affinity Photo, which is the a Photoshop competitor.
Yep.
Affinity Photo is major. I use it for all my YouTube thumbnails, the feature set, the customization, just the things that you can do with a photo with that program. Definitely pro level. I know you said Photoshop is on iPad. Even if it's a watered down version of the desktop app, you can still use Photoshop on iPad. I know a lot of people use Lightroom on iPad. And you got Pixelmator. You got other graphic design apps and other apps that aren't even graphic design. So there's a bunch of other pro level apps. So I guess my question to you, Chris, is what are some of the other pro level apps that people might not be aware of that are on iPad right now?
There is a ton of CAD apps. If you do any sort of like design for buildings or anything like that, there are an absolute ton of CAD apps. That's actually a category that got cut from that video just because I had no idea what I was talking about with that. And I figured if somebody is doing CAD, they will probably know what to look for better than what I would. But one of the things when I was doing research for that video that I found really surprising is there is a plethora of 3D design applications, 3D modeling apps. There was one called Nomad Sculpt that really jumped out at me. You could design 3D objects in it, paint it, do all sorts of things. It never slowed down. It never felt, like it was limited by the hardware or anything like that. It was really impressive. Now, I'm not an artist at all. I can't draw to save my life. But some of the stuff that's on their website just was really, really impressive. And I was kind of blown away that this was created on the iPad through this application. Procreate is an app that a lot of people use really often. It's going to be getting an update if it hasn't gotten it already. I haven't checked in on it in a minute. But you're going to be able to paint 3D objects on the new iPad Pros, on the new M1 iPad Pros. You're going to be able to paint 3D objects in that. That's pretty intensive as far as CPU and GPU power. So there's a lot of stuff for artists here. LumaFusion, I think, was an app you and I talked about last time I was on. That's a video editor app. If that's not a Final Cut competitor, there's stuff that's missing in it that is in Final Cut, but I've been using it for 4 or 5 years, basically since the start of my channel. I've been using it as my video editing application to edit all my videos, and I don't really feel like I'm missing anything. Sometimes I have to get a little creative to get around something that's missing in it, but honestly, I kind of feel that helps me become a better editor, just because it makes me think outside the box, like, hey, how could I accomplish this thing that I know would be super easy in Final Cut or Premiere that is a little more tricky in a application like this. But if you're just starting out in video editing and you don't have that baggage of Final Cut or Premiere or even Avid or something like that, LumaFusion is a great place to start because it doesn't have all those weird features and weird buttons and menu options and all this stuff that like thousands of options, and you could just feel overwhelmed really quickly. LumaFusion doesn't have that. It's a great place to start video editing, and I've just kept editing video there. I own an M1 Mac Mini, so I could technically edit in Final Cut if I want to, but honestly, that just sits as a file server. I don't use it. I don't interact with that computer at all. It sits headless, meaning it doesn't have a monitor plugged into it, and I just remote control it from my iPad.
Wow. So the man has a Mac Mini on deck, but he uses it as a file server. He's like, I don't need you. I got an iPad. Wow.
And technically, I haven't been using it as a file server lately because the new iPad Pros, they got Thunderbolt. And since they got Thunderbolt, I've been able to take the drives that I've been using as that archive storage, just plugging them straight into my iPad, actually plugging them into my Thunderbolt hub that I have right over here, plugging them in there and just backing up those files there. So I actually haven't been using it. I should probably sell the Mac Mini before like the M2 or M1X chip comes out. But yeah, honestly, that was kind of the biggest waste of money ever. It was a good tax write-off, I guess.
Wow. M1 Mac Mini for sale, y'all. Hit 'em up. So we've been waxing poetic about iPad, but we both know that the iPad and iPadOS and the whole iPad experience, it has limitations.
Yeah.
Probably the number one, one of the biggest limitations for iPad is just the lack of ports. You got one port, and that's the Thunderbolt port on the newer iPads. Obviously, you could buy a dongle, but that might not be ideal for some people. What are some of the other limitations that you have run into with iPad? I mean, I know you use it for everything, but obviously, I'm pretty sure you run into limitations and things that you can do. Yeah.
One of the biggest, as just like a creative person, is there's not a good backup system. So when you go to back up your iPad, there's only one way to do it, is with iCloud, and it backs up an image of your iPad. Now, it only backs it up when it's plugged into power and off. So most of the time when I'm using it, if it's plugged into power, it's because it's set up at my desk setup and I'm actually actively using it there. So every 2 weeks or so, I get that notification saying, hey, your device hasn't been backed up in 2 weeks or whatever. And I have to manually go in there and back it up. I would love to see Time Machine for the iPad. In fact, I was tweeting about this the other day. This is the hill I'm going to die on now. Like, this is the thing I'm going to get fixed for the iPad come hell or high water.
Yeah.
The other thing I want to see fixed too is external monitor support. Right now, when you plug in an iPad to a monitor, it just crops it to a 4:3 aspect ratio.
Crazy.
Yeah, I'm kind of. This was one of the things that I was surprised didn't get fixed in iPadOS 15. If I was going into WWDC, if I was gonna bet money on something, I would have bet money on this. This kind of being truly supported. Right now, it's kind of supported. It mirrors it, but like some things can be a little wonky. You could technically use the iPad in clamshell mode, meaning you can close it up in a keyboard case. But if you come across something that requires Face ID or something where you have to like tap on the display, it just doesn't work very well. So I'm kind of surprised that hasn't been fixed yet.
Yeah, besides the lack of ports, I think my other, probably the biggest limitation I have with iPad and iPadOS is the file system. Yes, there's a files app on there, but it's not very intuitive, and if you don't really understand how it works, it can be a little confusing. And it doesn't work how a file management system should. So.
Yeah, it definitely forks itself. Like, you have to realize, like, is this something that's locally on my iPad section, or is this something in iCloud or another third-party cloud service? I've gotten rid of Dropbox. I'm just all in on iCloud now because it just makes using the Files app easier.
Right.
But at the end of the day, yeah, Files does need a little bit of TLC.
Definitely, for real. Hey, shout out to those of y'all who are watching the podcast live on YouTube. Appreciate you guys tuning in to another episode of VypDrive with me and my man, Chris Lawley. If you want to go check out his channel, it should be hot linked in the title of the live stream. So basically click on his name and it'll take you right to the channel so you guys can check him out. All things iPad and other tech content. The dude is legit. Also, if you want to support the podcast monetarily, you do have the option of super chat. Not required, but anything that you're willing to contribute, greatly appreciate it. I just love the fact that you guys show up for each and every episode. So thank you for hanging out and tuning in to another episode of VypDrive. Shout out to those of y'all who are listening on audio only this week. Thank you for listening to another episode of VypDrive with me and my man, Chris Lawley. If you want to go check out his content about iPads and other tech-related content, and you should, his channel will be in the show notes of the podcast. So go down there, take a look, check him out. He is legit. If you guys would like to support the podcast monetarily, there should be a Buy Me a Coffee link in the show notes. It is not required, but anything that you are willing to contribute, as always, will be greatly appreciated. I just love that you guys tune in each and every time I drop a new episode of the podcast. If you happen to be listening on Apple Podcasts, though, if you could do me a huge favor and leave a rating or review, it helps the podcast get out to more eyes, help more people discover it, different things like that, helps Apple become more likely to recommend the podcast. So if you are listening on Apple Podcasts, which most of you are, please leave that rating and review. And thank you for listening to another episode of VypDrive. So Chris, obviously, as I alluded to earlier, the big hubbub in the tech space anyway was that iPadOS really didn't meet a lot of our expectations, especially with the added hardware on the iPad Pro. A lot of people feel like macOS and iPadOS will just like merge or have a baby or something. I'm curious to get your thoughts. Are you one of those people that would like to see macOS on iPad,
No.
or how do you feel about this? Explain.
No, not at all. So
Okay.
I see, and I'm going to get yelled at by somebody for this, I guarantee it. I see the Mac as a traditional computer. It's around. I'm glad it's around. It needs to still be around. But I see the iPad and the iPhone kind of as the future of computing. Now, the future of computing is not quite here yet. That's why the Mac needs to still be around. We're kind of in this weird middle ground. But eventually, we don't need to have things like disk utility and all these weird utility apps that, hang around on the Mac and PCs and stuff like that. Back in the day, we used to have to defrag our hard drives. We don't have to do that anymore. So I kind of see this as progress in the computing world. So putting macOS on an iPad, in my opinion, is going backwards. It would be going back to the days where we would have to defrag our hard drives and have spinning hard drives in our computers and stuff like that. Yes, the iPad still needs more, and it's not like the iPad isn't going to get it. But that stuff takes time. It's not going to happen in a single year. I don't think the iPadOS 13 was huge, but if we go back to that year, that was actually supposed to come out the year of iOS 12, but that got pushed because everyone was complaining about performance issues, and Apple executives said, nope, no major features. We're going to focus on performance, fixing bugs, stuff like that. And those big features like iPadOS 13 got pushed. So that got a whole extra year to cook. So when people say, oh, I want another iPadOS 13 year, you got to keep in mind that's kind of 2 years, to be fair. But ultimately, I do see the iPad as the future of computing. It's just going to take time to kind of get there. And I don't mean like future of computing, we're all just going to be using tablets and desktops are going away. I could see the iPad getting bigger and bigger, and in fact, getting a desktop version of the iPad. This is something I've wished for a long time. Give me a 24, 27-inch iPad that needs to be plugged into power all the time. Doesn't have a battery, needs to be plugged into power. I could pair a keyboard and trackpad with it and use the Apple Pencil with it. Like the Microsoft Studio thing. Like that was a cool design Microsoft did. I really liked that as a design. Now it ran Windows, so I wasn't going to touch it. I'm just kidding.
No.
I used to be an IT guy.
Oh, shot fired! Shot fired on the podcast.
No, I used to be an IT guy. I used Windows all the time. I just don't like it. But yeah,
Man.
I mean, it was a cool design. Like, I liked it as a design of a product, and something like that running iPadOS, I think would be really cool. But yeah, no, I don't think macOS and iPadOS should merge at all.
Okay, I need to go back to something you just said. So you were talking about how you would like to see a 24 to 27-inch iPad. And we've had rumors lately that Apple might be considering making bigger iPads, maybe 14, 16-inch iPads. I'm of the opinion that the iPads at current size don't even use the screen real estate properly. I don't know what the hell we're going to do with a bigger iPad. But you want a bigger iPad. So talk about that. Yeah, I just thought that interesting.
So those 14 and 16-inch rumors, I kind of have this theory that they aren't going to be tablets. They're going to be laptops. They're going to be iPads that are like permanently attached to a Magic Keyboard case. I don't know. That's just because that seems too big to be a tablet to me. I don't know what you think about that, but that's too big. But as far as using the screen real estate, well, right now we have split view between 2 apps. Well, for those bigger ones, why not have 3 apps? Why not have more apps? And then like one of the things that's really interesting with iPadOS 15 is Quick Note. Quick Note is basically this feature where you could swipe in from the bottom right-hand corner or hit a globe Q on a keyboard, and it brings up this little notes window, and you could type in this note and then dismiss it and get saved into notes. But it's this little popover window. And between that and picture-in-picture and slide over, you're kind of starting to see this like floating window design come to iPadOS. So I'm starting to wonder if windowing is coming eventually, if it's not just going to always be full screen apps, if you're going to be able to resize stuff and move it around. That would also make sense if they were going to do a bigger iPad. So maybe.
Interesting. Okay. So you are of the camp of, yes, give me the bigger iPad. Okay.
Yep, give me a bigger iPad, but also redesign the Mac Mini, or not Mac Mini. I'm sorry, iPad Mini to look like the iPad Pro. Give me that iPad. Yeah, I want that as my tablet, my holder. Because right now I have a 12.9-inch iPad Pro.
Me too.
That is a big iPad to sit there and hold and try and read a book from.
Yeah.
So I would love an iPad Mini for like reading a book, reading some tech news, playing games, whatever. But my work computer is the 12.9-inch iPad Pro.
Got to, man. Got to. So we've been talking a lot in this podcast about things that the iPad can't do or things that we wish it would do that it doesn't do at the current time. So as a person who does everything off iPad, you literally eat, sleep, and breathe iPad. What are some things right now that iPad can do that some of us might not be aware of?
Ooh, that is a good question. So one of the things I always like kind of freak people out with is if you take the Apple Pencil and your screen is locked, you could take the Apple Pencil, tap it, it'll wake it up, and it'll go right into notes, and you can just start jotting down a note. You can write out a note right then and there. And there's some stuff in settings you can kind of change how that behavior works. Settings, notes, you can change how that behavior works. It works a little differently if you have a Touch ID iPad. I don't remember exactly how it is off the top of my head, but if you have one of the ones like an iPad Pro that uses Face ID or the new iPad Air, you can just take that Apple Pencil, tap the display, wakes right up, and you can start jotting some notes. Hold down the command key. If you're still running iPadOS 14, hold down the command key, and you can see keyboard shortcuts for the app that you're currently in. That's a really nice feature. Still the same thing in iPadOS 15. It just has a nicer layout now. But in iPadOS 15, if you hold down the globe key, you can see system-wide keyboard shortcuts. So keyboard shortcuts for entering multitasking, slide over, triggering Siri. So one of the things that I love is I enable accessibility feature called type to Siri. So instead of getting just talking to Siri when you trigger it, you get a little text bubble so you can type on it. So I will now hit Globe S and then just types to Siri, which is really nice if you're working outside or in a coffee shop or in an office or something. So you don't look like that weird guy yelling at your computer the whole time, like play some music, play music. You don't want to be that guy.
Right.
So this way you can kind of just do that. That's pretty nice. But yeah, if you're using a keyboard that doesn't have a globe key, you can go into settings, general keyboard, hardware, key replacement, something like that, and then you could swap out like the caps lock key to be the globe key or something like that. I do that on my mechanical keyboard.
Wow, that is some pretty cool things that you just shared. Like, I don't think I probably wouldn't wear anything with the keyboard, so that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, I use the keyboard all day long. That's probably how I primarily interact with the iPad now.
So which keyboard are you using for your iPad? Are you using the Magic Keyboard or are you using one of the other ones?
I'm using the Magic Keyboard right now. It's nice. I like it. It's smart. The smart connector. Wow, I blanked on it. Apple names too many things with the word smart in front of it. I was going to say smart folio. No, that's not smart connector. It's really nice because you don't have to worry about charging the keyboard. Back in the days when I started working from the iPad, there was no smart connector, so you are constantly having to charge the keyboard you were pairing with your iPad Air 2 and stuff like that. It was just annoying. The smart connector fixed that. The trackpad's good. It's small, but I got used to it really quickly. I'm able to do all the gestures and stuff with it. It's definitely the keyboard I like. I do have the Logitech and Bridge one, the two new ones that have from them here. Okay. I'm working on a keyboard comparison video, but there is a bug in iPadOS 15 that causes Bluetooth to be really buggy. It just cuts out a lot. So the Bridge keyboard isn't working great on iPadOS 15 right now. So I'm waiting for that bug to be fixed in the beta, and then I'll finish up that video.
Okay, so a lot of people have been talking about this Logitech, I think it's called the Slim Combo keyboard.
Yeah, I have that one here. That's the one I have here.
Combo Touch, I think it's called. What are your thoughts on that one?
It's nice. One of the things that I've always kind of like stood by when it came to iPad keyboards is as soon as you add a kickstand, you've already lost, because a kickstand makes it so much wider, because now the front of that whole piece comes down. You have to extend the kickstand out, so you need to have a really wide space in order to use it. And also, it doesn't work well on your lap. So if you're, sitting in a chair or something, it does not work well in your lap at all. I'm not a big fan of it. One nice feature that they did do with this version is the keyboard part is detachable, so you can actually pull the keyboard off the case part. In the previous versions, you couldn't do that. So that's a nice feature. It also has a function row. That's something the Magic Keyboard doesn't have. So if you're somebody that really wants a function row, that's there. But I would argue Control Center is kind of the function row for the iPad. I mean, it's not hardware buttons, but I think you know what I mean.
Right.
It's nice. It's good. It's good to type on. It's not for me. It just requires a little too much work to get set up, and you just need that extra space that I don't have.
Right. Yep. It is kind of crazy that the Magic Keyboard doesn't have a function row, but like you said, if you just swipe down and get the control panel, you can do a lot of things there as well.
Mm-hmm.
Although I'm still arguing, I'm still screaming about the lack of a settings toggle in the control panel or the control center. Why do we not have access to the settings application from the control panel? That blows my mind. I don't understand it.
I'm actually surprised we don't have more stuff in Control Center that controls settings stuff. So instead of just jumping to the settings app, have more shortcuts to actual settings in there, because there's a lot of wasted space in Control Center on the iPad, especially. Because there's so much stuff. Like, you just get a little column on the right hand side, but there's so much extra space. So why not have even more settings that you can put in there? I'm with you on that. Yeah, it could be really interesting. When the touch bar was announced for the MacBooks, I always thought that would be interesting on the iPad. I know the touch bar is not something that's loved with a lot of creators. They can't wait for that thing to go away. I always thought that would be interesting on the iPad and something like the Magic Keyboard. Now, that might be a little hard to design on the Magic Keyboard, because if you look at one, like the way it's all set up to kind of save space and bring that iPad forward. Oh, that's another thing that I didn't like about the Logitech and Bridge. Both of those keyboards are the keyboard part is the full size of the iPad, meaning so when you're typing, the iPad sits really far back. So it's not as easy as the Magic Keyboard to reach up and just tap the display really quickly and interact with UI. You have to reach up and kind of reach out a little bit. So it's a little more of that gesture. Now, they have trackpads built onto them, so I don't think it's, it doesn't hurt it at the end of the day, but it is still nice to be able to tap the display. It's something I still do a lot, even though we do have a trackpad now.
Yeah. I mean, plus at this point, if you have an iPad for a while, like I'm pretty sure you both have, it's second nature to touch the iPad, even with a keyboard attached. It's literally second nature to touch it. I mean, it's an iPad. That's what you do. It's a touch screen.
Yeah. One of the biggest habits that I've had problem breaking over the summer is trying to use keyboard shortcuts to set up multitasking now, instead of just dragging and dropping applications, because I got really fast at just dragging and dropping apps into split view. But now I'm working on my big iPadOS 15 video and stuff like that. So I want to make sure I've been using all of these new features enough. So breaking those habits of just dragging and dropping and using the keyboard, that's been difficult. So totally.
No doubt, man. No doubt. So obviously next year, 2022, iPad, probably your new iPad Pro next year, I'm guessing. What would you like to see on next year's iPad Pro?
It's probably too soon to see the bigger sizes, even though that's something I would definitely like to see. Just because I think that rumor we all saw a couple weeks ago was that they were just starting on it. So I think that's too soon. One thing that I would really want to see, and it's kind of a minor thing, is I want Apple to bring colors back to the iPad Pro line. They had gold for a while, but also, like, come on, bring in blue or green or red or pink or purple, whatever. Apple's Pro computers are just so boring to look at, because it's either space gray or silver. And it's just like, come on, have some fun with it.
I don't understand this.
Yeah.
Why is Apple so allergic to colors on their pro level product? I don't
get it. It's like, fine, offer the silver and space gray versions for the people that are like the enterprise people that are just buying in bulk and don't care. But like, come on, there are those of us that would be happy to have a gold one or a blue one or whatever. Because I was thinking the other day, how cool would a gold iPad Pro look in the black Magic Keyboard? That would look good. I mean, that's basically your colors right there. Exactly. Yeah, that's exactly right. Yep. Yeah. So I'm like, that would look awesome. But also, I've been asking for this for a while. I don't think it'll ever happen, at least on the current size iPad Pros, is a second USB-C port or now a second Thunderbolt port. We were talking about that earlier. It would be really nice to have. I don't think we will get that on the current size iPads. I think maybe the bigger ones we might. I would also say Apple's argument to that is that they added a USB-C port to the Magic Keyboard so you can charge it and then plug in data stuff on the iPad. So that's probably their argument to that there. But one thing I really want Apple to do, and this is kind of more just across their line, I wanted to make a game controller. I want Apple to actually get serious about video games. Because right now, I don't think a lot of people realize they can pair Xbox or PlayStation controllers with their iPads, iPhones, Apple TVs, whatever.
Yep.
And on top of that, Apple has been kind of... They haven't been exactly easy to work with when it comes to these game streaming services.
Yep.
Xbox just launched theirs, and you have to go through Safari. And I don't know if you've had a chance to try it, but it was really laggy when I did it.
Yep.
Yeah, so I was like, nah, this isn't even usable. I'll revisit it in a couple months or something. I figured it's probably a launch thing, but yeah, I really want Apple to make a game controller. I think that would just be kind of nice. Just to be like, hey, and maybe even start a game streaming service. They love services. We all know they love that services revenue.
I mean, we know Apple Arcade's out there, although that's not a game streaming service, but Apple Arcade's out there, and but it's not anything on the level of game.
Yeah.
Like that, so yeah.
But yeah, if they had like console level games, if I could play the next Elder Scrolls game or whatever, I guess that's going to be an Xbox game now. Whatever, the next AAA game that's going to all the platforms or something. If I could play that on my iPad, they recently Divinity Original Sin 2 just came to the iPad, and that was a PC game for a really long time. It's like a heavy RPG game, and it works so well on the iPad with a controller. I'm just like, come on, guys! Like, you have to see this. You have to see like there's a whole nother world that you're just kind of like letting flounder that they could really just take advantage of.
Yeah, they definitely have the infrastructure in place to have a gaming service set up for Apple or iPhones and iPad. But up until this point, I mean, the best we've gotten is Apple Arcade, and that ain't it, Chief. That is not it.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's some good stuff on Apple Arcade and stuff like that, but it's not. They aren't games that if I'm going to sit down and play a video game for an hour or two, Apple Arcade isn't the first place I go and look at.
No, not at all. Not at all. So
yeah,
I agree. We can definitely agree on that. So I got to talk about a product that you recently acquired earlier today. Our boy Chris Lawley went out and got the MagSafe battery pack. I've heard mixed things about this. What are your initial thoughts?
So I've literally only had this for like 5 hours now, but what I did was I drained I'm looking here to see what this is. I drained my iPhone battery down to 5%, and charged the battery pack up all the way. And I have an iPhone 12 Pro here, not the Max, just the regular Pro. And I got it up to 60%. So it didn't charge it all the way. But at the end of the day, I don't think this is meant to be a battery pack. Like, this isn't meant to like charge your iPhones and all these devices. Like, this is meant to extend your battery life. The reason why I went and got this is I have a couple of trips coming up that I'm just like, the iPhone 12 Pro battery life isn't good enough to get me through a regular day. So traveling, being on LTE or 5G or whatever it'll end up being at the time, I can see that just draining my battery a lot. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to pick this up. I'll leave it in my backpack. When I need it, I can throw it on. It's MagSafe. I like that it just, clicks. I don't have to worry about getting a cable and plugging it into some external battery or anything like that. I could just attach it. Now, I do use the MagSafe wallet. So the unfortunate thing is you can't, put the battery on and then attach the wallet or anything like that. It's either one or the other. Mm-hmm. If you do have the case, you can go case. You can do case and then battery, or case and then wallet, but you can't. You do battery and wallet, which is unfortunate. So I will have to like swap between those. It does look like you could charge your AirPods if you have one of the wireless charging AirPod cases. You could charge your AirPods from that, so that's nice. I think this will be something I carry around with me on trips, but I don't think it'll be something I use throughout my day since I work at home. I just put my iPhone on the charger when it gets low.
Now, I'm a proponent of the smart battery case because I like the fact that the case wraps around the entire phone. It connects directly into the lightning port of the older iPhones, and you can use it that way. I'm kind of perturbed that they didn't make a MagSafe case this year, but I guess this is the next best thing that we have. So I'm curious to get your thoughts. Like, how does it feel in your hand, like holding the phone with that pack on the back of it? Is it like cumbersome? Is it easy to hold? How do you feel about it?
So I don't use a case. That should be the first thing I should mention is I don't have a case, so I don't have that any extra bulk there.
Okay.
It doesn't bother me. I have big hands though, so I just put my pinky right there, rest it. For those that are doing the video, sorry for the people that are just listening to the audio, but it fits in my hand just fine. I can use the phone one-handed still. It's not a big deal. Again, I have really big hands, so it's probably not normal a use case for most people, but I think it's fine. It also detaches really easily. So I can see like picking it up and like using it. You just take the battery case off, use it, and then slap it back on.
Now, when you say detaches easily, a lot of people they talk about sliding the phone in and out of your pocket. So do you think that battery pack will detach easily if you try to slide it in and out of your pocket?
So I wear skinny jeans. Yeah, I'm that guy. And
You're a perfect case. You're a perfect case.
Yeah. So I was trying it earlier. I tried it about 10 times and twice it popped off. So it might be a big issue. You might just need to get used to it. When I was using when I got the MagSafe wallet, it took me a little bit of time to get used to it. What I realized is I needed to kind of like pop open my pockets a little bit and then let the phone kind of drop into the pocket. So I kind of feel like the MagSafe wallet might be the same thing. You get used to it over time. Or the MagSafe battery. I'm sorry, I said the wallet. But the wallet, it hasn't popped off ever now. So I don't have that issue. So this will kind of be like a how does it work 3 months down the road kind of use case.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, that sounds about right. So we have reached a portion of the podcast where we are going to do a Q&A. So this is what we're going to do. For those of y'all who are familiar, you know what's going to come. If you're here watching on YouTube Live, you can ask your questions in the chat and I will show them on screen and we'll answer them. Or you have the option to join us on Twitter Spaces and be on the podcast live in real time and talk to me and Chris. So I am starting the Twitter Space right about now. So we are now live on Twitter Spaces as well. So if you want to come and be a part of VypDrive episode 149, all you got to do is come into Twitter and hop in Twitter Space and you can talk to me and Chris directly and we can answer any questions you guys have. So you can ask your questions here in the YouTube chat or you can come on Twitter Spaces and hop in Twitter Space. And we can do it like that. But however you guys want to do it, that's how we're doing it right now. So feel free to join us on Twitter if you are able and willing. All right, we got people already in the space. Let me get James up here. Oh yeah. There's some good stuff here. Mr. James Apple in the building. What's up, man? How you doing?
What's going on, Viper? So I guess I have two questions, but for Chris. And I guess I'll go with my one question first. Like, why is there no, I guess mask unlock with the iPad Pro and the Apple Watch?
I think that's because Apple sees the iPad as something where you're sitting down and using, and mask unlock is meant to be something that's on the go and like, hey, I'm in the grocery store and I need to unlock my phone really quickly. When they put out mask unlock, they put out kind of a security documentation, and it kind of made it sound like they weren't super excited to do this because it lowered security a little bit. It's not using Face ID, it's trying to use Face ID, and then it defaults back to the Apple Watch. The other thing too is the Apple Watch doesn't pair with the iPad. It only pairs with the iPhone. There's no watch app with the iPad. There's no communication between the Apple Watch and the iPad. It's just the Apple Watch and the phone.
Okay. All right, James, you might have to unmute if you're talking.
Sorry. No, I'm like technically speaking, but doesn't it like pair to the watch when like you do Fitness Plus or something like that, for example? Because
that is a good point. Yeah, I believe it does. But I still don't think Apple and I don't work for Apple, so I don't have the proper answer for you. But I don't think Apple sees the iPad as something you're using on the go, so they didn't want to kind of lower that security with that, because again, like the mask unlock thing isn't using Face ID. It tries to use Face ID when it sees it fails, but it kind of sees your face. Then it bounces back to the Apple Watch and sees if your Apple Watch is unlocked. So I could see it as a security thing. But also maybe I honestly, I'm not 100% sure. That would be a good question for Apple.
Yeah, no, because it's like the Mac can do it, the phone can do it, and it's like, why is like the iPad dead last in this race?
Yeah.
I think, like Chris said, though, the iPad is basically supposed to be a work at home device. It's not designed to be mobile, even though obviously it is a mobile device. But I don't think Apple expects people to use it as much as they use their iPhones or take it on the go as much. So mask unlock for it is not really necessary or needed, at least in Apple's opinion, probably. So.
Yeah, that's kind of my thought too. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Yeah.
Hey, James, man, I appreciate you coming up with the question, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
No problem, man. No problem. So we got a question on YouTube here from Sean Bowers. He says, are you still a big fan, Chris, of Craft for note taking, or have you switched to Note for note taking?
So every year when Apple puts out the new iPadOS and iOS releases, I always switch to the first-party productivity apps, or the ones that have had big changes. So over the summer, I am using Notes, but I am still a huge fan of Craft. They teased the other day that they are adding tables to the app, which is something everyone has been asking for, especially if you look at the comment section on my Craft videos. So that is really exciting. That's really cool. I'm going to revisit Craft again once iPadOS 15 is officially out, and I put out my walkthrough video and all the videos talking about that stuff. But for right now, during the summer, I use Notes so that way I know everything about it. And when I do make my walkthrough videos, I can make a really competent and airtight argument, not even airtight argument, but just explain all the new things in it and explain how I've been using it over the summer.
Listen to that man. That man, he gets knee deep into the product that he's reviewing, so he can give you the airtight reviews and overviews of what he's using. That's what's up, man. That's how it's done. So, for those of y'all on YouTube watching, again, you guys feel free to ask your questions in the chat, and I'll put them on screen. If you are in the Twitter space and you want to come up here, let me know, and I will gladly bring you guys up here to ask the question. Looks like we got Joseph that wants to come up. So let's bring Joseph up here, and we will have a chat with Mr. Joseph here in a moment. Thank you guys for hanging out in the Q&A with me and Chris. Appreciate you guys rocking out. Joseph, you're on VypDrive, man. What's up?
Hey guys, quick question, and you might have already answered this earlier, so I missed part of the stream, so I apologize if I'm repeating a question that was already answered. But Apple has over the years expanded the iPad lineup. We have larger iPads, smaller iPads at different price points. Is there a form factor or price point that Apple doesn't currently hit with the iPad lineup that you'd like to see them offer?
Yeah. We talked about this a little bit, but just really quickly, I would love to see a bigger iPad that's basically a laptop. We talked about the Bluebird 14 to 16-inch iPad, and I was saying that, hey, this could be not necessarily a tablet, but an iPad that's permanently attached to something like the Magic Keyboard case, and it'd be a laptop. But personally, my far-reaching wish is to get a desktop iPad, an iPad that's 24, 27, maybe even 32 inches, whatever, that's always plugged into power. It's not a tablet. It's a desktop computer. I pair a keyboard, I pair a trackpad with it, and use it that way. And that is a full-on desktop computer. Unleash, put whatever M number X chip in it or something like that, and just let it go blazing fast.
Interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I think you could probably get there, or Apple could get us there, just with better external display support. At least for that specific use case where you just pair some peripherals to it.
Yeah, there is that, but then there would also be the benefit of having something like Face ID built into, or Face ID and the camera built into the desktop. Like right now, anytime I'm doing a video call or something like that, I do have an external monitor on my desk. I use it, but I have to turn and face the iPad when I'm doing video calls and stuff like that. And I can't use my nice big monitor because that's not where the camera is. I need to look at the camera so it looks like I'm paying attention and I'm not, ignoring somebody that I'm on a call with, because I don't want to be rude.
Definitely
makes sense. Viper, can I get one more in, or
go ahead? Absolutely, you're up, man.
Cool. Real quick. So just piggybacking on what James was asking earlier, is there something that the iPhone can do that the iPad can't, similar to watch pairing that you'd like to see? added?
Something the iPhone can do that the iPad can't. That is a good question. Why do I feel like there's like a bunch of things and I just can't think of something off the top of my head right now? We're getting widgets on the home screen in 15. Oh, this is going to seem like kind of a weird one. The health app. I'm diabetic, so I put my blood sugar numbers into the health app every single day, or twice a day actually. And there's no health app on the iPad, so I have a shortcut that I run to do this. I just put the numbers in, and it puts it in the health app. I have to run that from my iPhone. I'd love to be able to run that from my iPad as well, but the health app needs to be there in order for that to work.
Interesting.
Yeah, for me, it's the health app and also the wallet app.
Yeah, yeah,
that's on there as well.
Yeah, those are both good.
Interesting. Hey, Joseph, thank you for coming up, man. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
No problem, man. No problem. All right, we have a question on YouTube here from Tech for Your Needs. He says, if your computer broke and you are forced to use the iPad for everything, what is the one thing that you need to do first to get things going?
I use my iPad for everything already, so I'm good to go. I'm good to go. I don't need to worry. If my Mac Mini broke, I would just be like, oh, well, I'm good. That's just my file server that I'm not currently using for anything. So if my main iPad broke, I would just grab one of my other iPads because I have multiple. You have to have backups when I'm running beta software on one. I got to have a reference device. So yeah, no, I'm good.
Okay. Let me rephrase the question for him. So if a person has a MacBook, right, or have a MacBook Pro, MacBook, whatever, but they want to transition from using a MacBook to using an iPad, what should they know before making that transition?
I would kind of assess what you're doing with that Mac or PC or whatever. Just be like, hey, I'm doing photo editing. I'm doing a bunch of emails. I'm maybe writing blog posts or whatever. Just kind of make a list of all the stuff that you do on those computers and find the apps that work the best. Now, there may be, like we talked about earlier in the stream, there's Photoshop on the iPad, but Photoshop is not the best Photoshop app for the iPad. That's Affinity Photo. I think you and I can both agree on that all day long. So I would not. I wouldn't just assume everything's going to be one-to-one. Figure out what you're doing and kind of make that transition. It's going to be rough. It's not easy at all to go from a Mac to from a Mac to an iPad or a PC to an iPad because everything isn't one-to-one. Multitasking works different. The file system works different and stuff like that. So just kind of like figuring out those things one at a time is really nice. I didn't go. I made a smooth transition from working from the Mac to an iPad. I just started moving a little bit of tasks one at a time to the iPad from the Mac. So I didn't just wake up one day and was like, okay, I'm done with the Mac. Like I'm all in on the iPad. I started with things like writing blog posts and emails. I moved that to the iPad. And then I finished it off with editing videos on the iPad. That was like the final thing that kind of I needed to be able to do. And then LumaFusion came around and I was.
Yeah, if you're going to make that type of transition like Chris, I would suggest doing it slowly just so you can figure out what your workflow will be like on the iPad so you can make the most smooth transition possible because there's nothing worse than trying to make that transition like cold turkey and figuring out, oh, I need this, but I can't do it on the iPad or I need this and it's not there. So definitely something that you want to do at a gradual pace. You don't just want to wake up one morning like you said and just, oh, you know what? Damn my Mac. Let me use an iPad.
Exactly.
It's not going to go well.
Yeah. Keep that. I even when I made that transition, I still had a MacBook Pro around for like 6 months just in case.
Of course, absolutely. Redundancy, as we know. I think we in IT know redundancy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and that was exactly why I kept that MacBook around was because of the IT stuff. So yeah, 100%.
So the one thing that Renee Ritchie had mentioned in his iPad review video, and something that I definitely agree with, which is not in place right now, is the camera on the iPad, the front camera on the iPad. If you have it situated in landscape, it is all the way at the left side, and it's kind of weird when you're trying to make like FaceTime calls or take video calls. It's kind of in an awkward position. I would love to see Apple kind of shift it to the middle of the iPad, especially when you have it in landscape. I know they expect most people to use it in portrait mode, and that's why it's where it is. But we got to figure out a way to like either redo the camera or have like multiple cameras on the iPad. So there could be one in landscape in the perfect spot. So we can look more natural during video calls, not have to go ooh or ooh. This is kind of crazy.
Yeah, you could probably see me doing that here. Like I'm like,
Right.
yeah. The only issue I see with that is that's where the Apple Pencil charger is. So there's magnets there. So I'd be worried it might mess up the camera. I'm not a hardware engineer at all. So that's the only thing in my head that I've always kind of been like, that may not work. I think Center Stage is kind of their answer for now. And it kind of works as long as you get the iPad up high. That's the trick. If you use the iPad in a Magic Keyboard case, the iPad's low and it's going to be looking up your nose. It's not a flattering angle at all. So I have this guy right here, this laptop stand that I put my iPad on for video calls and stuff. So that way it's up high and, it's not, people aren't looking up my nose and seeing nose hairs and stuff because that's gross.
Nobody wants that. Nobody wants that.
Nobody wants to see that.
Nobody wants that.
Nobody.
So, again, if you're on YouTube, feel free to put your questions in the chat. I think James wants to come back up, so we're going to bring James back up here on Twitter Spaces. If you're in the space and you want to come up and ask a question of me or Chris, feel free to request, and I will gladly bring you up. James, welcome back, man.
Yeah, welcome. So now I figured out my second dang question. So what's your thoughts on iPads? I guess adopting OLED somewhere down the road, like maybe not towards these iPads, but maybe towards the next generation ones.
Yeah, that's really interesting. In fact, I was just talking to somebody about this. It would be good if they do the good OLED, like the TV OLED and not the phone OLED, right? Like that's right. Like, cause I mean, I don't know. We'll see. I'm happy with the mini LED stuff. I know there's some blooming. It's good. I know some people say there's blooming and stuff, but it's really in extreme situations where you see the blooming, like all black background and here's like a white text or something like that, which I think the only way to fix that is with OLED and stuff like that. But the mini LED display is really nice. I'm not clamoring to have OLED on the iPad, but if Apple does it, and in traditional Apple style, they're going to do good OLED. Like they're not going to replace something that's good with something that's bad. It'll be interesting to see. I'm not clamoring for it. I think there's other hardware things I would rather have first. My question, now I just thought of this. Would OLED be better for the battery life than mini LED?
Probably yes, because it would only light up the pixels that need to be lit up and things like that. And mini LED is like a complete like backlighting situation. So yeah, it would definitely be better for battery life.
Okay, then I want it. Yeah, now I want it.
I want it. But make no mistake though, like Chris said, the mini LED display is legit. It is very nice.
Yeah,
now, is it a reason to upgrade from the 2020 to the 2021? Absolutely not. But it's nice to have for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, but it's like one of those things where it's like, I'm going from a 10.5 inch iPad Pro to a 12.9, and it's like that mini LED display is like looking like hot fire right now. and what I think it's because I think what they're saying is like the OLEDs are going to come to the lower tier models, like the Air, the next generation Mini, whenever that redesign comes out for that one. Because it's like seems like it's like that way, and they're just gonna keep mini LED on the iPad. Is that like a good balance?
I think so. Because the display, especially like on the base iPad and the iPad Mini, the displays on those are not good at all. Like I can't stand them. Especially the ones that are air gapped. I'm like, the iPad Pro has ruined me. It's ruined my TV that I bought like a year ago. It's just it's just completely ruined me. So if OLED does come to those lower end iPads, I think that would be a good thing. Like if anything that can make those iPads a better bang for your buck, and I think that would, because the displays on those are not great right now.
Definitely. Yo, James, appreciate you coming back up, man. Thank you.
Thank you.
If anybody else in the Twitter space wants to come up and ask a question of me or Chris, please let me know and I will bring you up here. We're just hanging out on VypDrive. We're in the Q&A portion of the podcast. We're probably going to hang out for maybe another 5-10 minutes. So if you got questions, let us know. If you're on YouTube, just put them in the comments and we'll paste them, and we'll go ahead and do that. But that mini LED display is it's legit. It's very nice.
Yeah, when I got the review unit, I watched Mad Max Fury Road and Blade Runner 2049 on it. And it's the best viewing experience I've had of those movies since I saw them in theaters. I couldn't explain it. Like, that was the thing I had the hardest time for in my review explaining, was the mini LED display and how good it is.
It is awesome. It is definitely amazing. So I got a question for you.
Okay.
Have you ever used an iPhone Pro Max or a Pro Max or a plus size iPhone?
Yes. It feels like I go back and forth every year. So the 11, I had the Max. The 7, I had the Max. The 10 was just one size. The 6S, I had the regular one, and then the 6, I had the plus one.
Okay.
So every year I go back and forth.
I asked because I saw that you have the iPhone 12 Pro, which is the middle tier, the 6.1 inch iPhone. So I have an iPhone 12 Pro Max. That's my main phone, basically. But recently, I acquired the iPhone 12 Mini, and this one changed my life. Like,
I want one.
This phone right here is just the screen size and everything, absolutely amazing. It's made me consider not getting a Mac phone this year. Now, I don't think I can rock this full time because it's too small, but it makes me want to get the iPhone 12 or 12 Pro or the 13 Pro or 13 or whatever. I want the middle iPhone this year. I don't think I'm getting a bigger one anymore.
I held one of those for the first time today when I went to the Apple Store to pick up this guy. Held one of those for the first time, and I wanted to buy it immediately. I left the Apple Store because I was like, nope, you're going to buy one of these. And the iPhone 13 is like 2 months away. Like, do not buy an iPhone right now. I love that thing. I know everyone has issues with the battery life, but I work at home all day long. I don't care. This is even though this isn't the Max, this is still a big phone. And I
think I'm going to get that one this year. Yep.
Yeah. I mean, it's a good phone. I love it. I do have some issues with the battery. It doesn't make it through all the day. So that's a bit of a bummer. The Max, I think the iPhone 11 Pro Max, that had the best battery life. I don't know what they did with that battery life, but it could last for 2 days if I wanted it to.
It was amazing.
Yeah, it was great.
Definitely. All right, so I think our last question of the night is coming from the Big History Nerd on Twitter, Facebook. What's up, man? You're on VypDrive. How you doing?
Hey, I'm doing great. Thank you for asking. So talking about the iPad screens and like the OLED versus mini LED, it kind of got me thinking, if Apple ever introduces a foldable, say it's 5 years from now or however long it takes, do you think it'll be in the iPad lineup or in the iPhone lineup?
This is something I've been thinking about a lot ever since I saw Westworld. The ultimate device that I want is an iPhone that folds open into being an iPad mini that's running iPadOS. So when it's closed up, it's an iPhone running iOS. When you open it up, it's an iPad mini with the dock, multitasking, split view, all those features. It's an iPad mini. I want that device so badly. I think it'll come to the iPhone first. I could see maybe Apple doing it for the iPad eventually, but those screens will be costly. To make big versions of the screens, it'll be costly. So I would see the iPhone getting that first, then maybe the iPad. But an iPhone that opens up into the iPad is the device that I would love. I just, Apple, here's my credit card. Charge whatever you want to it.
Apple will make a killing off of that for real.
Yeah.
Hey, History Nerd, thank you for coming up, man. Appreciate you.
Thank you for having me.
All right, looks like we got one more question from Mr. Tigneri. So we're going to bring him up here real quick, and then we're going to get out of here for the night. Let's bring up Mr. Joshua here. See what he has for us. Mr. Tigneri, what's up, man? You're on VypDrive. I'm going to need you to unmute, sir.
I guess my phone is just going to be dumb. I've got one question for both of you.
Okay.
And it is, what is a goal that you guys are actively working towards that you would like to accomplish by the end of 2021?
Ooh. Well, my goal for 2021 is sitting right over my shoulders right now. Like, that was my main goal. Or if you're just listening to audio, it's my silver plaque. I just hit 100,000 subscribers on YouTube. I don't know. I mean, end of 2021, just keep making good videos. Like, that's it. Like, just keep growing, making better and better videos. I think that's it for me right now.
Yeah, for me, my goal was to put out 3 videos a week for this year, and I failed miserably on that. But I think for the rest of the year, I just want to put out at least 1 video a week. I would love to do at least 2, but just if I can get out at least 1 video every week, I'll be fine. And I think I've been doing a pretty good job at that at least. So we're good to go there. I think that's going to be my goal for the rest of the year. 1 video a week. Appreciate the question, man. Thank you.
Thank you for having me on. Take it easy.
No doubt. Hey, so shout out to those of y'all who are watching or listening to the podcast live on YouTube tonight. Thank you guys for tuning in to another episode of VypDrive. Again, if you want to check out Chris's content, his channel is actually hot linked in the title. So if you click on his name in the title, it will take you right to his YouTube channel. Check him out. He is legit one of the best content creators on the platform, especially if you want to talk about or learn about iPad. He is that dude. Check him out. Again, if you want to support the podcast monetarily, the super chat option is there. Not required, but anything that you guys are willing to contribute, as always, greatly, greatly appreciate it. Just love that you guys are rocking out with me for another episode of VypDrive. So thank you for showing up and showing out. Appreciate you all. Shout out to those of y'all who are listening on audio only this week. Once again, thank you for listening to another episode of VypDrive with me and my man, Chris Lawley. If you want to go check out his content, his information will be down in the show notes. You should check him out, especially if you want to learn all about the iPad and all the pro level apps and all the inner workings and how it flows. Definitely check him out. He is legit. If you would like to support the podcast monetarily, there should be a Buy Me a Coffee link down in the show notes as well. Nothing is required of you, but whatever you're willing to contribute, greatly, greatly appreciate it. If you happen to be listening on Apple Podcasts, which most of you are, please consider leaving a rating or review as it helps more people discover the podcast. Helps us get up there in Apple, help maybe Apple potentially recommend the podcast to more people. So if you do happen to be listening on Apple Podcasts, please consider leaving a rating or review. And thank you for listening to another episode of VypDrive. But until the next time, people, this your boy Viper, the man about tech. You know where to find me. So come back for more.